Hello, and welcome to our Community Forum Sports Special. My name is Fred Hearns. I'll be your host. And today we're going to be interviewing a young man who's no stranger to most of you who've been watching these programs, Coach Chuck White. But he's not only a coach. We want you to know that Coach Chuck White has worn many hats during his career. He was a player, he was a coach, he served as a referee, a game official, he served as an announcer, just an overall sports personality. And I'd like to this time welcome him to the program. Welcome to the show, Coach.
Well, thank you, Fred. It's kind of different sitting on this side of the track, so to speak.
Well, what we're going to be doing is talking about your career. And of course, many people remember some of the things that you did, those people who grew up here in Tampa. But a lot of our newer and younger viewers may not be aware of some of the things that you did during your career long before you were a coach. You started out as a player. And we know that you started out at Carver Junior High School here in Tampa. Tell us about those days and how you got your start.
Well, at Carver Junior High School, as it was called, it was over on Willow Avenue between, in that area near Laurel or whatever street it was then. We had several talented people just come out and played in the sand, and then we football, and then we go on the asphalt court, as they were, and we played basketball. So they had two courts going north and south, one for the girls and one for the boys. And then they later on, after they got so many holes in them, you know, you're dribbling the ball and all that, they had guys like Jupy Bostic, Charles Jupy Bostic. They had guys like Herman Big Man Pittman, Bungoli. They had Peter Rabbit, and so many guys. The only thing I can think of now, nicknames when we go back that far, but they were a talented group of kids, and they would come out and play all during the summer. The sun never got too hot for us, and it never got too cold. Coach Billy Reed and I lived in West Hyde Park, South Dakota near Platte, and Oregon Avenue near Cleveland. And we would hook up together somewhere near Grand Central, which is now called Kennedy, and we would walk all the way down Oregon until we got to Cass, and we would go over to Willow, and then that's when we started running, because the sooner you got there, you could pick a team, and they call that having a down, and the next guy would come. So if you didn't hurry up and get there, there'd be so many guys from all over the city coming there to play. So that's how I got my start, and later on Preston Taylor Lamb came when I was in 8th grade, and we came out for the team. And there was so many guys out there, I just didn't think I was going to make the team, and I was working every day, and before they made the cut, it looked like kind of thin and narrow for me, so I left. But in 9th grade, he made me come back out there. He tried to keep me in 8th grade, but I left, and in 9th grade, I was a starter, and I played, and that's how I got my start over there.
Well, Coach, you mentioned nicknames, and just about everybody you mentioned had a nickname. What was your nickname, and how did you get it?
Well, they called me, first of all, the man of 1,000 shots, the man of 1,000,000 shots, because I would shoot those uncanny shots over those taller players and everything to keep them from blocking the shot. When they blocked your shot, that was an ashamed thing, and man, guys would just harass you all through the year about blocking your shot. So I didn't want to get my shot blocked, and I would spin around all sorts of ways in the air. Sometime I make the shot, and sometime I miss it, but I made most of them, because if you didn't, they would take you out. So they thought that a man of 1,000 shots was too long a word just as a nickname, so they eventually started calling me Trick Shot.
Trick Shot White. Now, you mentioned also to me earlier that the first game you played in was a big, big rivalry game. That was the Middleton-Don Thompson game. And even to this day, well, Don Thompson evolved into Blake High School. Even today, that's a big rivalry whenever Middleton and Blake play each other. But your first game was that big game between Middleton and Don Thompson.
That was my first high school game.
Your first high school game. And who was the official? Who was the referee in that game?
Believe it or not, there was a former, well, he was a former Harlem Globetrotter, Prince Clown. He was the greatest man on the team. Goose Tatum, Reese Goose Tatum. He was stationed at MacDill Air Force Base. He also played baseball here with the Grandstanders, and he was a great athlete. So the officials were late trying to get there, and some, I guess, may have been a little afraid as I look back at it because they didn't allow us to play in Sacred Heart Gym. It was so cold. Big Jim Williams was the coach of Don Thompson, and Bethel was the coach of Middleton. He said they got together and they told Mr. U.R. Thomas, who was Cecil Boston, one of them, I think it was Cecil Boston or U.R. Thomas, and they got together with the principal at Middleton, and they got together with the father, whomever, with the Catholic school, what's the name of it?
Sacred Heart.
Sacred Heart.
Right.
And they allowed us to play in the game that night. And lo and behold, I think it was a thing of not sitting down here with so many people over there, so they asked a girl to get up or something, and the lady was going to snatch you up, and that young lady put some whip on that lady, and the guys were jumping out the window and running all over town. And there was a bad scene there, but they didn't bother to ask somebody to get up for a long time, I guess, at that time. But anyway, Reese Tatum was a guy who knew basketball, and they respected him so much till they said, well, since our official, they said, well, there's Goose up there. Beth would say, hey, Goose. They gave Goose a striped shirt, and they gave him a whistle, and he had on his army pants and his tennis shoes, and he officiated the game.
Well, that's quite a memory, and I know a lot of the young people listening may not have heard of Goose Tatum, but you probably have heard of the Harlem Globetrotters. Goose Tatum was the greatest Harlem Globetrotter probably ever, as you mentioned.
Right.
Now, later on in your high school career, you involved in some state championships, I understand.
Oh, man, it's amazing how we got to a championship game. And when I tell youngsters this, we had a school with no basketball coach. We didn't have a coach. We had one basketball in the entire school. We would go over to Christine Meacham Elementary School and practice. It was short court, sand all the way on the court, you're slipping, low basketball goals, real low. Even I could jam almost then, but it was somewhere that's the best we had to offer for practicing. Sometime we couldn't practice there, we would go over to Booker T. Washington whenever Booker T. Washington was out of town, and that was a better situation because the goals were taller, but it was a clay court. And then we would go over to St. Peter Claver, and that was a short court and had a fence right there next to the goal. It was short, but we managed to go through the season because we had some very talented players at that time. And we went to the state basketball tournament, and Middleton beat us, I know, my freshman year. And we lost to them. I know they had Jupiter, Big Man, Lovestrong, J.W. Darling, and all those guys playing. But then your father came over from Middleton, Samuel Red Hot Hearns. He came over with us, and several other guys. We had Radio Red, who was our talkative Muhammad Ali type player. He talked a lot and got everybody afraid of him, and even had his whole team afraid of him. And he controlled everything, whatever he wanted. If the ball didn't start into the center from him, he would call timeout himself. Tell him to throw that ball into this pivot. Radio Red in that team. I mean, whatever Radio wanted, he got it.
Leroy Porter.
Leroy Radio Red Porter. We had Norman Shot Jackson, and we had your father, Samuel Red Hot Hearns. We had William Pimp Brown, and Nathaniel Waiters, Homer Hemingway, Rudolph Peter Rabbit Allen, and several other guys. I mean, Archie Williams, we call him Treetop. But we had a great team, and they told us that our team was better than Middleton. And we go back next year with the same team. Middleton came back the next year, and we were declared we were going to beat them, and we did. We beat Middleton that year, and we beat Middleton the following year. So Middleton had won 2 games, and they played them against Don Thompson. And anybody who would win 3 consecutive games, they would give them a 6-foot championship trophy. And Big Man and Jupe and all those guys was talking about where they're going to put the trophy. And Norman said, We're not going to let them put their shame on us having a big 6-foot trophy. We're going to break that little 2-game streak on them. And we did, and we won that year and the next year and went to the national both years.
Now, the national tournament, I understand, was in Tennessee?
Nashville, Tennessee, the Tennessee A&I State.
That must have been quite a thrill for high school kids to be able to do that from Tampa, Florida, to go all the way to the national tournament. How did the Don Thompson teams do there?
Well, first of all, I'd like to tell you a little joke here. We stopped at Knoxville, up on the hill, Rock City, what is it, some kind of city on the mountain. And Billy Reed, see, Middleton lost to us, but Middleton had such a great team. People liked to see them play, and Bethel was from up in that area, Tuskegee. And they called Bethel and asked him would they bring his team there, because one team was not coming. So we both rode on the same bus. Billy Reed got off the bus along with all of us, and he saw it was a furnace up there, but all the trash was falling. We thought was trash, all the Southern guy. Billy Reed said, man, there's a lot of trash falling around here. So your dad, Hearns, said, man, that's not trash, that's snow. So I've been up north before, that's snow. So I wanted to get off the bus now to see some snow. But nobody had seen snow holiday before. But we rode together and we went up there and we played together. When Middleton would play, we would sit right behind them and root for them. And when we played, Middleton played. So we lost our first game the first year we were up there, and we lost it to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we lost by 1 point. Middleton went all the way to the final and met Tulsa that same year, and they beat Middleton by 8 points, 8 or 9 points. The next year, we went up there, we creamed most everybody, and we got to Fisk, and Fisk wanted to play the game over at their gym. And they were getting ready to play the game on their gym. And Ransom, E.P. Ransom was the coach. He said, well, the tournament was being booked for Tennessee A&I State Gym. Why they going to say the principal want the game? So the commissioner came and said the tournament will be played at Tennessee.
Well, I know those were some great memories and some great players, and a lot of those players went on to great college careers. Now, tell me about your senior year at Don Thompson and what happened after you graduated. What year was that?
Well, I'm dating myself now. It was back in 1950, my senior year.
Okay.
One thing I liked about my senior year when I was playing football, we played Middleton the last game, and I scored a 55-yard touchdown that Purcell Houston had thrown. I intercepted, went 55 yards, and scored the winning touchdown. Billy Webbs came behind me and got another one, but I had made the winning touchdown already, so that icing the cake. And I thought that was a great thing because the way I caught the ball, it was back on my 3 fingers, believe it or not. The ball looked like it was out of reach, and I somehow amazingly brought it back in. And Nick Houston was supposedly coming over to see Big Jim Williams about a scholarship to FAMU the next day. So what happened the next day, Pepsi Cola Fat, who used to harass guys over at the drugstore, said, oh, you threw the ball to Charles White, so now you're going over there to get your award. They gave you a turkey dinner. So they gave the players a turkey and said, we're invited. But that was a great thing my senior year. And also our senior year, we went to the national, and that's what I just talked about. So I thought that was one of our outstanding feats to get that touchdown.
Now, a lot of these guys either went to Florida A&M University or Tuskegee Institute in Alabama.
The top players.
The top players, and I know there were some great games played between the schools and all those Tampa guys playing. And there was one game in particular, before we forget, I want to talk about the game where there were only 4 guys on the court. And I think you remember that game. Unbelievable, 4 guys against 5.
I think in perspective, we should talk about the Tuskegee game where all of us would be on the court and they would be from Tampa, because the latter year we came back when we won that tournament with 4 guys. But what I'm saying now, most of the top players went to Tuskegee or Florida A&M. They had 3 starters at Tuskegee, and we had 4. So somewhere along the way during the game, there would be 10 guys on the floor, and they would stop the game after the announcer would say, "Ladies and gentlemen, you just witnessed history. This is something that's happening now, has never happened before in the history of basketball, and it's happening now. I want to let you know that all 10 of these guys on the playing court represent 2 states, Florida and Alabama, and they represent 2 colleges, FAMU and Tuskegee, but they also represent and come from one city, Tampa, Florida, the basketball capital of the South." And everybody would just give us a round of applause, and they say, "This is something you may never see again in your life." But unbehold, the next year, so we did it 2 consecutive years, when we would be at Tuskegee, somewhere along the way, they would have all 10 guys from Tampa would be on the floor playing against each other, representing Tuskegee and FAMU. Then when they come to Florida A&M, they would have the same 10 guys on the floor, and they would stop the game and announce that. And everybody thought that was history. But that's something should be written up somewhere, but it never has been written. So I think maybe somebody might like to talk about it wherever. But getting back to that last game.
Right. This amazing game where you had 4 going against 5.
Yes. We played in the Tuskegee gym. Logan Hall is the name of that gym. Home where Radio Red made his fame. Norman Jackson and Gilad Thompson and all those guys. Rigoberto Garcia. Well, anyway, we were playing Alabama State. Alabama State was the visiting champions. And when they call you the visiting or visitation champion, you had the best record during that season. Out of all the SIAC, Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference teams, Alabama State was the best team, number 1. Well, to make a long story short, we got to play them in the final game. We had just gotten by Radio Red and them, and Radio Red and them was rival against Alabama. So most of the guys over there from Tampa, they were rooting for us, and all the Tuskegee guys were rooting for us because Alabama was their rival, so they were pulling against Alabama. Well, anyway, the school we played was from Alabama. Most of the fans from Alabama. The referees were from Alabama, and we got a lot of fouls called on us. So Freddie Dowles, who coached Gibbs High School over there,
in St. Petersburg,
he was the last one to foul out. So it left us with 4 guys. We had only 3.5 minutes to play, and we were down 5 points. After coming from 25 points down at half, 15 points at the 3rd quarter, and 5 points down now, we felt like we were going to do all right. Freddie just come in the game, and he slammed the ball down because he stole the ball, picked it clean, give it to me. I went down and slam dunked it to the basket. And the guy, after the basket was made, he said it was a foul, and Freddie had the ball. He slammed it down, so he put him out. Jake Gaither said, "You don't put him out. It was just a technical foul." But he put him out, so we only got 4 guys now. And all the Alabama guys laughing and talking, they're going to beat us. And I was so fired up. I said, "Man, we don't need but 4 guys to beat you." I said, "I'll beat you guys by myself. All I need is somebody to throw the ball into me." I was so fired up. So anyway, we caught up with those 3.5 minutes just before the buzzer, and we tied it up. Now we going into our first overtime. They scored 2 quick baskets on us in that 5-minute overtime, and we still got only 4 guys, and they got the entire team to substitute. Many of us had 4 fouls. Irvin had 4, and I had 4, and I think Thomas Hogan and the other guy only had 1 or 2 because they were not starters, but Irvin and I were starters. So anyway, what made it happen, what we did, we came back and tied it up. They jumped out 2 baskets ahead of us. We caught up and tied it up again. Now we're going into another overtime. Now they jump out one basket ahead of us, and now we tied up and catch up. And finally we tied it up, and now Lightning Hall, a guy who I played against in high school, he played with Bama High in the National when we went there, and he was one of the best players I had ever seen in high school. He was dribbling the ball, looking around, and he was dribbling it high because we only had 4 guys. And somehow my instinct said, go. And I hit the ball and knocked it down, and I jumped up, and we got 2 points ahead of them. Now the clock is getting red and down, they throwing the ball out. So we got it back across on our side. We intercepted and got it back on our side. We had about 8 or 10 seconds left, and we were trying to freeze the ball. And I passed it to Thomas Butch Hogan, who was a senior, not a starter. And what happened then, we, Hogan, no shoot. He shot the ball and hit nothing but the bottom of the nets. And now we lead 4 points. 3 or 4 seconds ago, they threw the ball down the court, and I was somewhere around that ball. I intercepted. And I think I carried the ball on the bus, and I don't know if your dad or somebody got the ball, but they flogged me so till I fell out, and they carried me to the dressing room and gave me some smelling salt, and they tell a joke about Jake Gaither came in there and say, the trainers tried to revive me. I couldn't revive. So the doctors tried to revive me. Jake said, hell, I'll get him up. See, Jake said, stand up, baby. If you're a true rattler, jump up. So I jumped up. I love my rattlers. So they always kid me about that. But we're named the famous Final Four at Florida A&M, and they're going to recognize this at the Hall of Fame this coming year at the football game.
Well, Coach, those are quite some memories and some history that probably will never be duplicated. Of course, after college, you went on to another career, a long, illustrious career as a coach, as an official, and of course, then later on as a sports commentator and as a game announcer. Tell us about your career after college and all the memories that you had. We've only got a few minutes remaining, but tell us some of the highlights.
Another thing I like to think about, I was contacted by Les Harrison, the manager of by Les Harrison, the manager of the Rochester before they went to Cincinnati Royals, but I didn't go there. The Army drafted me or whatever have you. But when I came out, I started coaching at Key West, and I started writing articles here and there, and I coached over in Quincy, I coached at Blake, and I had a junior high school team. I had a junior high school team of girls and boys that I coached. Believe it or not, I was a girls basketball and boys at the same time. Believe it or not, the girls was undefeated, the boys were undefeated. We went to a tournament, the girls won the championship, and about an hour later, the boys. So
now, this was at what school?
It was at, not Carter Paramore, it was a junior high school.
Okay, up in North Florida.
Yes.
Okay.
For some reason, I'm lost now thinking of the name of the school, but we won that tournament. And another thing like that, when I was down in Orange County, I was coaching at Drew High School. And when I was at Drew High School, I was coaching boys football, and I was coaching boys basketball. My football team won the conference. I was coach of the year. My basketball team won the conference. I was basketball coach of the year. So they had me to take a picture later on in the year with a football in one hand and a basketball in another, say, a feat that's hard to beat. One man at one school, 2 championships. So I think a lot of those things.
And now, of course, you're the host of the Coach White Sports Special. And what are some of your memories as far as a commentator and a game announcer?
It's nothing better than having special people like you and others that I've interviewed. I've interviewed guys like Mean Joe Green of Pittsburgh Steelers. I've interviewed several coaches. I've interviewed Arthur Ashe. I keep that interview on the radio. I've interviewed Tony Dungy. I've interviewed Doug Williams. And I've interviewed a lot of people. I never did get number 99.
Okay, Warren Sapp.
No, I never could get him. I never did get him. But I've interviewed so many great guys, and it's opened doors for me to go in and out in high heights, just being a sportscaster. It get me to many big-time games, all in New York. I was up at the Mets game, Cleon Jones and all of, and I had an opportunity to go so many places, being who I am in sports, that doors will open. So that's about all I could say, and I just was so proud to know that God has given me that kind of a talent and that opportunity to be a sportscaster on radio and television and to write sports columns. So it's been a pleasure doing this, Fred.
Well, to wrap it up in about 1 minute, Coach, what would you like for people to say about Coach Chuck White at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, when you've blown your last whistle, when you've coached your last game? What would you like for people to say about you and your life?
I don't know what I would say. I just like for my work to just speak for me. All the work that I've done, I like to let it speak for me. All the pleasant memories that I've had and all the people with whom I've come in contact and helped, I just want to say he did his best in every phase of life that he worked in athletics. He gave his best, and that's what I can truly and honestly say it. I gave my best in every step of the way in and out of sports.
Well, Coach, it's a pleasure to see you from time to time around when we go to different high school basketball games. I know you're always at the state basketball tournament in Lakeland. You're constantly involved in the lives of young men, young athletes here in Hillsborough County, encouraging them and trying to make sure that they do the best with their opportunities. And we certainly do appreciate all the things you've done. I know ever since I was just a little kid, I can remember seeing you over on the other sidelines. Of course, I was at Middleton High School, and you were at Blake High School,
Yeah.
coaching with Big Jim Williams, and you've been molding young men's lives for a very long time, as well as some of the young ladies. I didn't know you coached girls at one time.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Well, Fred, I'd like to say the same for you. I admire you as a young man who's come up through writing sports, announcing sports, hosting sports shows, and doing so much for people with the Middleton alumni and the city of Tampa. You have just paved the way for many youngsters just to look and follow. And I talk with your father all the time and say how proud he should be of you, and he is. And he talks about it's great to have a son like you. And I guess everybody should have a Fred Hearn as a son. So I got a grandson. I got two grandsons coming up, David White and a Johnny Liggins. They're coming up. I got two granddaughters, Alexis Shavers and Chelsea Shavers, and their parents, the Liggins are Bill and Yolanda Liggins. Their parents are Lenny Shavers and Marnette Shavers, and grandson David, his mother's Monica White. And you know my wife, Eloise Cabrera White. She's a darling of my smile, and she's been so helpful to me with all my sports activities. And today, she's my backbone. Without her, I don't know where I would be.
Well, Coach, I want to thank you for all the great things you've done over your lifetime. We're looking forward to seeing you again on the next Coach White Sports Special. Thank you for being my guest.
And thank you for the interview.
And this has been Fred Hearns. Thank you for joining us for our Community Forum Sports Special.